understand what a boycott is. A boycott is a passive act. It is the most passive political act that anyone can commit, a boycott. Because what the boycott was doing was simply saying, we will not ride your buses. No sort of antagonism. He was not even verbally violent. He was peaceful. Dr. King's policy was that nonviolence would achieve the gains for black people in the United States. His major assumption was that if you are nonviolent, if you suffer, your opponent will see your suffering and will be moved to change his heart. That's very good. He only made one fallacious assumption. In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none. Has none.
A few words about Martin Luther King's nonviolence movement.
I think Dr. King is a great man, full of compassion. He is full of mercy, and he's very patient. He is a man who could accept the uncivilized behavior of white Americans, their unceasing taunts, and still have in his heart forgiveness. Unfortunately, I am from a younger generation. I am not as patient as Dr. King, nor am I as merciful as Dr. King. And their unwillingness to deal with someone like Dr. King just means they have to deal with this young generation.
We will defend ourselves, we will shoot them, we will kill them because we are bent on surviving.
And you have arms to do this?
Oh, definitely. And we're trying to get as many arms as we can, and we're teaching the people themselves in the community to arm themselves.
I wanted some grassroots up power to the people, legislation and laws that gave the grassroots real empowerment, you know what I mean? What I believed in was how we could get greater community control and community input into the political institutions that affect our lives. The very philosophy and slogan that we're spouting is all power to all the people. Whether you're white, black, blue, red, green, yellow, or polka dot, in the final analysis, we want real people's community control empowerment.
There's no hope in dope. I hope you always remember that, especially with the school children out of school for the summer, and it's summer in the city.
It's now about the welfare and the well-being of human life. We must talk about economics. We must talk about where people are poor. We must galvanize our nation to begin to take care of the poor. America should not have no poor people. No one should ever go to bed hungry. There should be gainful employment. There should be a living wage. There should be access to health with no charge. We should have education for free, like so many other nations successfully have applied. All these things, he was now tampering with the playground of the wealthy. And when he came to that moment about dismantling the economic construct, he had to go.
In a thunderous, resounding, united voice that we have no intentions of stopping this fight until we have eradicated every single remnant of racism in this country. Until we have ended the war in Vietnam and the neo-colonialism in Africa. We are not going to stop fighting until every political prisoner is free and until all the monstrous dungeons in this country are mere memories of a nightmare. Sisters and brothers, that is what the power of the people is all about.
And now, Malcolm X was the smartest uneducated. You see, Malcolm X They could find nobody with no degree of PhD could debate him on truth. And naturally, this country can't stand truth. Now, I was lecturing the other day down in this same cellar, and a gang of little black boys came in. They held up their fists, talking about black power. I said, look, son, I'd like to straighten you out. I said, black is beautiful, but black isn't power. Knowledge is power. For you can be black as a crow, you can be white as snow, and if you don't know and ain't got no dough, you can't go, and that's for sure. The white man that landed here, he came with two great weapons. One is the Bible and the other was the gun. If it didn't humble you with the Bible, it crumble you with the gun. And he's still praising the Lord and passing the ammunition all over the world.
You know, the points he said about black power I think is very, very, very important. But you have to grow and change. You can't just be caught up in the racial aspect of it. You have to, he said in the little poem he said you have to know and you have to have the dough. You know, you can't just be caught up in, oh, do it just because it's black. So it's interesting that he ran a black bookstore. He understood the importance of the bookstore, but he also understood it's not just about the black. You know,
it is true that many of our leaders have been confined in the concentration camps here in America. I know that the Black Panther Party will prevail. It is the vanguard of the people's struggle, and that while leaders are put into prison, new leaders are born, new leaders are made.
The birth of this nation was conceived in the genocide of the red man. Genocide of the red man. Of the red man.
Let's take the movement a step further.
I believe that a time has come, a point has been reached where a line just has to be drawn. There's a favorite line that I know about, and it says that there is a point where caution ends and cowardice begins. All three of these pigs that we have, they're not for us. They do not represent the best interests of this country. They definitely don't represent the best thinking in this country. In fact, they represent the very worst tradition that was ever to crawl from beneath the rocks in this bankrupt country.
The whole apparatus of the state was set up against me. They had all of their resources, and the FBI, the police, and they really meant to send me to the death chamber in order to make a point. It really didn't matter who I was, or it was that I was a very convenient figure to make a point that they would suppress any efforts at revolution and liberation.
First of all, if you're going to talk about a revolutionary situation, you have to have people who are physically able to wage revolution, who are physically able to organize and physically able to do all that is done. And when you talk about a revolution, most people think violence, without realizing that the real content of any kind of revolutionary thrust lies in the principles and the goals that you're striving for, not in the way you reach them. On the other hand, because of the way this society is organized, because of the violence that exists on the surface everywhere, you have to expect that there are going to be such explosions. You have to expect things like that as reactions. If you are a black person and live in the black community all your life and walk out on the street every day seeing white policemen surrounding you, when I was living in Los Angeles, for instance, long before the situation in LA ever occurred, I was constantly stopped. No, the police didn't know who I was, but I was a black woman and I had a natural, and they, I suppose, thought that I might be a, quote, militant. And when you live under a situation like that constantly, and then you ask me, you know, whether I approve of violence. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense at all. Whether I approve of guns. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. some very, very good friends of mine were killed by bombs that were planted by racists. I remember from the time I was very small, I remember the sounds of bombs exploding across the street, our house shaking. I remember my father having to have guns at his disposal at all times because of the fact that at any moment we might expect to be attacked. The man who was at that time in complete control of the city government, his name was Bull Connor, would often get on the radio and make statements like, niggers have moved into a white neighborhood, we better expect some bloodshed tonight. And sure enough, there would be bloodshed. After the 4 young girls who lived, one of them lived next door to me. I was very good friends with the sister of another one. My sister was very good friends with all 3 of them. My mother taught one of them in her class. My mother, in fact, when the bombing occurred, one of the mothers of one of the young girls called my mother and said, can you take me down to the church to pick up Carol? We heard about the bombing, and I don't have my car. And they went down, and what did they find? They found limbs and heads strewn all over the place. And then after that, in my neighborhood, all of the men organized themselves into an armed patrol. They had to take their guns and patrol our community every night because they did not want that to happen again. I mean, that's why when someone asks me about violence, I just find it incredible. Because what it means is that the person who's asking that question has absolutely no idea what black people have gone through, what black people have experienced in this country since the time the first black person was kidnapped from the shores of Africa.